Okay, so the Torah portion this week is Vayikra. Vayikra means Vayikra means and he called. It means God called to Moses. Very, very important. In fact, this, when little Jewish kids first go to Hebrew school, the very first lesson that they get is Vayikra. It's not Bereshit. It's not Genesis. They don't start learning Torah at the beginning of the Bible. You know why they do that? Why they don't do that? I only ask this because we've gone over this every year for the past 7 years. The reason why, actually, Vayikra is very, really cool because Vayikra is about killing animals. And little kids love that. So, no, the reason why is because Leviticus teaches about holiness. It's about drawing close to God. It's about getting close to God and getting close in our relationship to God. So Vayikra is and he called, that God called to Moses. God called Moses close to him. We want to teach children when they are most holy about the most holy things. And in the process of doing that, we ourselves become more holy. In other words, we learn more by teaching little ones than we do by teaching ourselves, because they can see things from a purer eyes than we can see them. Because we've thought of all kinds of reasons why what God has to say doesn't really apply to us the way that the way it actually says. We try and say, well, it doesn't really mean that. It means something else. Whereas the little 3-year-olds are going to go, well, that's what it says. And so we can really learn a lot from the little ones. Okay, Hope. So listen, what you have to share about the Word of God is very, very important to me. So you're listening and you're hearing what we're saying. What you say, if you have something to say, we have to stop and listen, because what you have to say is very, very important. Okay? But nothing about Dora the Explorer. Vayikra is about the offering of sacrifices and about bringing sacrifices to God. Bringing our offerings to God. It's God's definition of what worship is supposed to look like. So Vayikra is about how we draw close to God in worship. And it talks about the bringing the sacrifices and what the sacrifices are like. And so it's interesting because the first thing it says about bringing a sacrifice is that you have three different people in 3 different characters involved in Vayikra. You've got you, and you've got God, and you've got the priest. The first important thing we don't want to miss in this is saying when you bring your offering. So the first thing we need to understand about the way we come to worship God on His terms is that worship is messy business. We want to think we get our lamb or our bull or our turtle doves, and we bring it up to the priest and we say, okay, goodbye, and we go and he offers the sacrifice and we can stand back and watch. In this portion, it shows us that worship is not a spectator sport. You're not sitting on the sidelines watching while your sacrifice is being offered on your behalf. You, as the individual, are offering your sacrifice. So the first thing is that you're going to get bloody. You're going to get messy in this process of making your offering. So sacrificing is messy. Worship is messy business. Worship is uncomfortable business. It's not something that we come with and so we're going to go have a good time. We're going to step out of what we feel is normal and appreciated and do something that we're doing this because God tells us to, not because we think it's necessarily a good idea. Now, people excuse to say, well, this is an agricultural society where they're used to killing animals and that's just one of those normal things. That's probably true after you've done it 40 or 50 or 100 times. That's not true the first time you take the knife in your hand and you hold it next to the throat of this cow or this sheep, and your eyes meet this animal's eyes, and there's some kind of a weird connection, and it looks at you like it's saying, "What you doing?" because that's what it looks like, what they're doing. And then you actually take this animal's life. That's not a comfortable thing for a person to do. It doesn't matter how many times they've seen it. Once you do it yourself, it's a very strange, unreal kind of experience. Even if you don't have a whole bunch of people watching you do it, even if you're just slaughtering chickens in your backyard, it's not a comfortable, easy kind of a thing, unless you're between the ages of like 4 and 12. Okay, but that's why the adult male of the household comes and he puts his hand on the animal's head and he kills the animal. Okay, if you got a 6-year-old there, he's going, awesome! No, we don't do that. No. Kind of ruins the whole spiritual impact. Okay, so worship is first dirty. It's messy business. And it's very uncomfortable for us because we're not coming on our terms. We're coming on God's terms. We're coming to do what he tells us to do, not what we think might be a fun idea. We're coming before God. Does that make sense? So that's the first thing that you learn in this portion. The second thing that you learn is that the worship is there's 3 different kinds of offerings that are offered here. There's the bull, which is kind of spendy business. And then you have the ram, which is also not exactly cheap. And then you have 2 turtle doves, which anybody can come up with. So it's very significant that God offers us the opportunity to worship at the station in life where we are. And they're all counted as the same, but they're all completely different. And so God gives us the opportunity to worship where we are. Now it's really interesting because the bull has to be a male bull. I guess that's the only kind of bull there is. A male cow, male cattle, behemoth, critter, large. Critter? Yeah. Huge. That's got to be a guy. That's got to be a male cow. Let's go on. A ram. You have to have a male ram. There's only one kind of ram. That's a male ram. So you have to have one of those guy kinds. You have to have a male sheep or a goat. Thank you. So no female animals here. Okay. Okay. But turtle doves and pigeons, it doesn't say if it's a male or a female turtle dove. You ever try and tell if it's a boy pigeon or a girl pigeon?
The color of its poop.
The color of its poop? No. It doesn't say if it's a boy pigeon or a girl pigeon. You know what? You know what that tells us? Don't get bent out of shape on this thing. Okay? I mean, it needs to be a male. You need to be able to do what's reasonable for you to be able to appreciate and do. Now, you, the offerer, you, the worshiper, kills the bull. You, the worshiper, kills the ram. The priest kills the pigeon. Why do you suppose that is? I think it's pretty simple. I think he doesn't want you to cut yourself. Does that make sense? In verse 15 of chapter 1, it's the priest. You bring the pigeons and the turtle doves, and the priest is the one that kills it. He brings off its head. Now you have to participate in it. You do all the plucking and all that business, and I think you divide it in 2. I don't remember. No, he shall split it at its wings. He cuts it. But that's a small critter, and the ability to do that effectively and efficiently isn't quite as the same as what it's going to be for on a large animal. And so the priest takes on that role. You're still participating just as much, but that specific aspect of it you don't have to do. I think that's significant in saying that God's allowing us to worship within our means and within our capabilities. Well, the training meals for worship. The worship, the sacrificial system, is designed to demonstrate for us how we come to God in an allegorical sense. He's showing us what it means to draw to him. It takes life. It's hard. It's dirty. It's messy. It's work. It requires commitment. There's no turning back. All these are different elements of drawing into worship that are part of this thing here. That he's trying to present to us and trying to get us to understand. Also, it requires death. And for us as Messianic, we understand that all the death, what Paul says in Romans is without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. And so the doctrine of substitutionary atonement, I love using that word, those words. Makes me feel smart. I can't spell them, but it's okay, I can say them. So the idea that I can't pay for my sin. I can't draw into this relationship with God by myself. It would kill me to do so. So I'm going to bring along this critter and it's going to die instead. That doesn't make much sense. But representing that my life isn't good enough to reach out to God. It requires the sacrifice of another life in order to do that. That's just the opening statement of drawing into the sacrificial system. And built upon that, with each level of sacrifice, we get a clearer glimpse of who the Messiah is. So the first one, just with a sacrifice offering, is just saying there has to be the shedding of blood in order to enter into worship. The next sacrifice is the meal offering or the grain offering. It's also called the meat offering in the King James Bible. That's just to confuse you because it's not meat, it's grain or meal. So the meal offering, the grain offering, there's 4 different kinds of meal and grain, and if you read them from a cultural setting, they're successive in their freshness. There's the fresh grain that's just brand new out of the bud, and that's offered fresh, and then it's ground, and then when it's fresh ground, then you bake it, and then after that, after it's gotten older, then you fry it. And maybe there's only 3. I can't remember. I think there's a 4th one. But anyway, they're successive in their in the way that they're handled throughout the year. And so, what that tells us is that there's no wrong time to come to worship before God. There's not a stage of life, either when you're young or when you're old, or when you're old and crusty, or you're full of oil, or whatever those kinds of, wherever you are in life. Doesn't matter what your stage or station in life is. God still wants you to draw to him in worship.